Hello everybody and welcome back. It is good to talk to all of you again today, and today we are looking at the Massachusetts, which is a work in progress tier 8 premium, I think, US battleship. And do keep in mind that because it is a work in progress ship, that anything that I talk about can and potentially will change. So what is the Massachusetts? Well, the Massachusetts really is the Alabama, which is a pretty damn good tier 8 US battleship. And it trades a bit of main gun performance for improved secondary performance. So in terms of trade-offs, it's got less range. Its Sigma is a little bit worse, although its overall dispersion ellipse and dispersion circle for the main guns is the same as the Alabama. However, Sigma is 1.7 compared to the 1.9 for the Alabama, and this Sigma difference you will feel. Like, you will definitely feel it when you say, gee, the Massachusetts feels less accurate. So definitely the main gun performance gets traded off here. However, you gain quite a bit more secondary performance. Now, on paper, when you first look at it, the US battleships don't really look like great secondary battleships, because you look at the Massachusetts and you're like, well, it's only got 10 127mm guns, and if you compare that to, like, let's say the German battleships, they have a lot more. But it is actually rather deceptive, because with the Massachusetts, quantity doesn't mean everything, because what the Massachusetts has is better dispersion on its secondaries from the get-go. So that's without the installation of any sort of module or skills. Her secondaries already have better dispersion. So without running, let's say, manual secondaries, your secondaries are going to already be more effective than, let's say, the German battleships. Now, with manual secondaries, you'll notice that the dispersion becomes very, very, very tight. Still, it is important for me to point out that the Massachusetts isn't going to be completely dependent on its secondary guns. It still does have 9 406mm rifles. And these guns, even though the Sigma isn't as good, if you hit correctly, can still really hurt, as you will see pretty early on as I find myself that Tirpitz. Now, you will realize that my range isn't that great. And for an Alabama, that Tirpitz would have been easily within range, but for the Massachusetts, you're going to have to get closer, which isn't necessarily a bad thing when you think about it, because your Sigma ain't that great. So sort of forcing you to get a little bit closer and getting closer to the action is actually a good thing, because it'll minimize the effects of that crappier Sigma. Yes, there's still going to be times where you shoot and a target is close and you're still going to have kind of stupidly wild salvos, and you're kind of going to go, ugh. But hopefully by that kind of range, your secondaries are already helping you by adding a lot more damage or whatnot. And fires too, because they do fire HE shells. A few other things to kind of talk about as well when talking about the secondary guns. So Massachusetts has the American 127mm guns. Now, if you remember anything from the US destroyers, these guns tend to have pretty crazy arcs. They really do have these rather crazy arcs. But while not fun for primary guns, for secondary guns, it's actually just fine, because you can actually have your secondary guns lob shells over islands. They do have that significant arc, and they can get over these islands and hit targets behind cover. So that's a positive. Second, and the other sort of advantage, is that because they have such these really crazy high arcs, they have a tendency of hitting the superstructure area. And, you know, it is 127s, and even with IFHE, you really still want to be hitting superstructure area, because that's really where most of your damage is going to be coming from. Against most battleships that you're going to encounter, you're not really going to be penetrating sort of bow area or stern area or anything like that. 32mm armor is going to render you kind of useless. And that's another thing to sort of keep in mind. If the enemy battleship sort of rushes you bow on, and they close that range, you're going to have a bit of a bad time. Your secondaries aren't going to really do anything, right? So you kind of do need to maintain that kind of, let's say, 10 kilometer-ish range, kind of the range that I'm maintaining with this Richelieu over here. As you can tell, see, the arcs are nice. They'll go over these islands. And 406mm guns, again. Still very, very good guns, even though the Sigma is a little bit wonky. Looking at the Massachusetts, I keep getting this feeling that the purpose of the Massachusetts is to provide US light cruiser players a effective sort of captain trainer without having to respec the skills. Because if you take a look at the light cruiser skills that are necessary for a captain, you're most likely going to see things like IFHE, you're going to see AFT. Essential skills if you are going to be using the light cruisers, but these skills also sort of synergize very well with what the Massachusetts is all about, right? Having the ability to have these secondary guns be quite lethal. Furthermore, there's sort of few other things that you got to sort of mention as well. Other things that you would most likely take on a US light cruiser captain would be something like Superintendent, and Superintendent also synergizes very well with Massachusetts. And the reason for that is because Massachusetts actually has a very, very quick cooldown repair party, the HP recovering consumable. Its cooldown time is only 40 seconds, so you can actually get off quite a few heals because she is sort of expected to be a bit of a brawling ship. And on a light cruiser, you're almost guaranteed to take that skill because you have all those consumables as a US light cruiser. And additional charges for radar and DFA and all that stuff is kind of helpful, so you're probably going to have that skill as well. Other things that you are going to consider if you're running a light cruiser captain is you're probably going to think about maybe running, for example, Demo Expert. Demo Expert's going to help the fire chance, right? Things like that. So it's almost like this particular battleship is very much designed with US light cruiser captain training in mind. That's at least what I think. Because it seems like everything that you would want to have sort of on a light cruiser, you would pretty much be able to just throw that captain onto Massachusetts and she'd be fine. However, if you want an absolute dedicated 19-point Massachusetts captain, then yeah, there's going to be some small differences in the skills you pick. For me personally, if I had to make a choice between, let's say, Concealment Expert versus Manual Secondaries, I might just kind of opt for Manual Secondaries. My experience when I play these ships with the two skill differences is that I tend to have better damage when I'm actually running the Manual Secondaries. I just get more hits with my secondary guns. More hits, more fires, more damage. Kind of running with that. With Concealment, I mean, it is a secondary build battleship. You're trying to close the range, so you're not really going to be all that stealthy. So, at least for me, I would prefer that particular skill over Concealment. But like I said, if you're running a light cruiser and you're trying to train captain, then Concealment Expert's what you're going to have, and it is actually okay as well. It's kind of a viable skill. A couple other things to talk about. One thing that I'm not, well, I'd say two things I'm not particularly fond of when it comes to Massachusetts and secondaries is, one, American armor profiles really aren't the best, I would say, for a secondary battleship. You do take citadels, because if you just mess up the angling a little bit, and you just show that a little bit too much, you can get citadel. Something that you wouldn't worry about in what we so far have associated with secondary build battleships, the Bismarcks and some of the French battleships. They have that turtle back. It helps them tremendously when it comes to that sort of closer in brawling role. The US battleships, they don't really have that going for them, so for me, that's a bit of a defect, honestly, to say, hey, let's have the US battleship run it. But like I said, with the Massachusetts secondary characteristics, she still can be effective, make no mistake about it. It's not like her secondary guns are pathetic, right? They can do work and they can do good damage. It's just that you do have a tendency of taking more damage while you're performing that particular secondary role. Thank God, like I mentioned earlier, you did have that really fast cooldown repair kit. That will keep you in the fight longer. One other thing, and this is a bit more of a complaint, I would say, than the armor profile for me, is for secondary battleship, I personally want them to be faster, so I can kite at the sort of ideal secondary range or chase to bring things within secondary range. Massachusetts, being a South Dakota class battleship, the same as the Alabama, is just not very fast. And that makes the secondary thing challenging at times. Because at times you almost are just like, come on, please get in range, please, please, please. You're sort of forcing that. And not the most comfortable playstyle at times. And at times, for example, when you're being rushed down, if somebody's rushing you down, you don't have the ability to maintain range by running away. definitely one of the shortcomings, I would say. So, looking at Massachusetts for me, yeah, her secondaries are good. She's a fun ship. Do I think that she might become a replacement for Alabama in maybe a competitive setting? I'd say probably not. Typically, competitive settings and random battles tend to be different in terms of how they're played and what kind of strengths are more emphasized. For a battleship, your main gun accuracy is probably far more important in a competitive setting. But in randoms, the Massachusetts, I think, will be fine. She's a fun ship to play. She's got that secondary performance. A bit of a hoot, too, at times. You just kind of get into range and just watch your secondaries go to town on somebody, right? That's definitely not a bad thing. And especially since it has a tendency of adding damage that you otherwise wouldn't expect. I think I've had games where my secondaries did upwards of 40k damage, and that's quite a lot. Typically, on average, it's about 20-something thousand, 25, 26,000. And if you add that to, let's say, a 70, 80k damage game with your main guns, I mean, average damage is over 100,000, which is phenomenal for a tier 8 battleship, right? So, for me right now, I think, in terms of my average damage, my Massachusetts is actually higher than my Alabama. So, I think I will say that right now. I do believe this ship has higher average damage for me right now, just because the secondaries do have a tendency of just adding a whole chunk of damage that you really didn't have to do all that much to obtain, shall we say. Like, they are automated, they just do their thing, and it's sort of like, hey, look, if you're in the right position, you got damage, right? So, final sort of concluding thoughts on the Massachusetts. I like her. I think she is, if you're planning to just play random battles, she's a fun ship to play. She's very different from the other US battleships in that secondary regard. Different sort of playstyles, different things that you're concerned about. Yeah, she just offers something fun and different on the US BB line. Now, even if you're thinking about getting a ship not for the purposes of light cruiser captain trainer, and you're just like, should I just get the ship because can I play her in a way that'll offer me something fun and different? Yeah, absolutely, she is. I think, comparatively speaking, between her and Alabama, individual ships, they both have their own strengths. They share some strengths, right? AA, for example, maneuverability, torpedo protection. They do share some of those strengths as well, but the playstyles between Alabama and Massachusetts are pretty darn different and make for interesting gameplay, I would say, to say the least. And anyways, as for this particular battle, here's the final results screen. So almost 600,000 credits, 6,763 experience, 180k damage dealt. Now, of course, most of that damage was done by the primary guns, but if you actually look at the primary gun damage, you do realize that the secondaries did add a bit of damage to this particular game as well. Did manage to pick up a couple Citadel hits, definitely set some fires. 115 target hits, not the most I've had, I've definitely had more. In terms of base experience, 2009, I was top of the team. Enemy team did have Cossack, which is really HMCS Haida. I'll have a video for her, she's not looking all that great right now. Anyways, okay, look at the damage total, and this is what I was trying to get at, right? 28,159 in secondaries, 18,000 from those fires, total added together, what, 46 some odd thousand damage. And, the original damage I did with only the main guns was 134,000. You throw that extra 40 something thousand in there, and all of a sudden, hey, look, I'm sitting on 180k, right? That's good damage. That's what I'm getting at. Sometimes you just get that extra chunk of damage, which really makes your damage total look really nice. Credit earned total with the premium account, 513,000. Without it, would have made 330k. Anyways, folks, oh, one more thing before I sign off. Leave a comment in the comment section below. In this video, I'm going to be picking somebody for a June Community Contributor Crate. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about the Massachusetts. Leave a comment about that as well if you want. All the comments are going to be sort of pulled together, and I'm just going to draw something with a comment picker. Anyways, folks, take care of yourselves, have a good one, and I'll talk to all of you again soon.